Photographers, beware. What I'm about to do to this image may be considered unethical. I'm going to adjust the curvature of this sand dune so that it is a bit more like a clean S curve that you see here. I'm going to take this image that I acquired from a fine photographer by the name of Darren Leal, and I'm going to adjust the sand dunes. I'm going to use a feature called liquefy, but I'm going to use it in a very special way so that I can control this edge more accurately. Let's begin here from the beginning. I have no layers. I'm targeting my original image. If you were professional, you would take this original background layer, drag it down here to the base of the layers palette, and create a copy, as I've done here now. Then, let's go to our paths palette, because a path is what we're going to draw to define the accuracy of this new curvature. Of course, in the paths palette, you can select the tool here, the pen tool, from the tool palette, move into your work area, click and drag, very similar to Adobe Illustrator, and create a Bezier curve which takes on the shape and flow that we would like the sand to take, like this. Now I created one of these paths earlier. It's this path right here, my sand path. You can see I've defined it from the top of the image, moving down across the sand dune, and then I stop where I'd like to stop my distortion of this image. Now, with this path targeted here in the Paths palette, I'm going to move into the palette as you see here, hovering over the sand path. I can hold down the Command key on the Macintosh or the Control key on the PC, and the icon changes as you see here. Now all I have to do is click on this path, and it converts it into a selection. That's important as a part of this project. The next step is to go up to Select and down to Feather. I find that I need to soften this path just a little bit in order to get the best quality results. In this case, I'm setting it to a feather radius of 8. Now, this value in pixels is tied directly to the resolution of your image. In this particular case, I have a 12 megabyte image and I'm using an 8 pixel radius. Your values may vary. The goal is to soften this so it's not a hard edge selection. I'm going to click OK. Now that we have this, our next step is to go up to Filter and down to Liquefy. Remember, we're liquefying the copy of the original. Here we are in the Liquefy dialog. When you have a selection prior to going into the Liquefy dialog, it creates a mask instantly for you. The mask protects certain areas of the image. Those areas under this amber colored mask are protected and you cannot move or adjust them. Those areas outside the region can be moved and shifted around. I see certain areas which seem to bulge away from my defined path. I'm going to simply move into my image here with the Forward Warp tool. Going back into my image, clicking here, and then dragging toward the edge that I defined with my path. I can then push this back in line with the curve. I look for other areas within the path that do not match. They seem a little bit darker and seem to flow outside of this path. That looks great. Now, I want to address those paths that are incorrect on the other side of the selection. I move over here into my Control panel and select Invert All. By selecting this, I'm inverting the mask. You can now see the other areas that need to be adjusted. I simply click here and move to the right. I'm moving it up and against the path and the mask that we created earlier. I like to use a fairly large brush when working on these projects, so it grabs a lot of the material so we don't see the stretch marks so clearly as we move the sand around. Let's do a little bit more retouch there. If you found that you missed a portion like here, then simply invert all again and go back in and push some of these regions back in again. You may find that you need to adjust the size of the brush for your particular project. You can simply and easily move over here into the control panel, click and hold, and then readjust the size of the brush for more accurate work along your curvature. This looks pretty good. Let's click OK and check out our results. Let's now deselect this line under Select, Deselect, and we can look at our image. Very, very nice. I now have an altered state of reality. Let's go back to our Layers palette. I'm going to turn off my background copy image so we can see the image before and the image after. I often find that liquefying an image can get out of control. This technique gives you a boundary in which to work with and a defined edge to follow. Use this technique on a variety of projects where you need to push pixels around in a more accurate way.